Did you know that 90% of boys and 70% of girls are exposed to pornography online? Meanwhile, 71% of kids say that they're hiding internet activity from their parents. In 56% of divorce cases today, a major contributing factor is one spouse's continued use of inappropriate content online. What are you doing to protect your family online? Covenant Eye's Internet Accountability monitors how the internet is used on your family's mobile devices and their computers. Each web page visited is rated similar to TV shows or video games, like T for teen or M for mature. This information is collected in easy-to-read reports, and as a parent, you can receive weekly reports for your kids. Plus, you can invite your friends to receive reports for your internet activity, which enables you to enjoy the benefits of accountability and protection online as well. These reports provide you with a comprehensive view of how the internet is used in your home. They include information like the videos that are watched and words typed into search engines. Are you looking for additional protection? Covenant Eyes also provides internet filtering, which blocks inappropriate content and limits the amount of time spent online. Install Covenant Eyes on all your devices, your computers, phones, and tablets. There's no extra charge, and we provide free customer support. It's that simple. Sign up today. It's your turn to protect yourself and your family online.
It's an honor to be with you today, and I'm especially eager to dive into our sticky faith research. We at the Fuller Youth Institute, we have spent much of the last 5 years studying sticky faith, or how to help young people have long-term faith. Now, why has that been a relentless passion of ours? Well, because of the data itself. And I want you to imagine youth group kids that you care deeply about, high school students. And then I want you to imagine them as high school seniors getting ready to make the transition from high school to life after high school, whether that be college or the military or the workforce. The best research indicates that only 1 out of 2 youth group graduates from great families like those in your church and from great churches, only 1 out of 2 stay connected to Jesus and the church after they graduate. As a mom and a leader and a follower of Jesus, I'm not satisfied with that, and I know you aren't either. And so that's why we at the Fuller Youth Institute, we have studied over 500 youth group graduates, over 50 families, and over 150 churches to try to figure out how we can help students experience the love and the grace of Jesus for a lifetime. Now, I'm a mom myself. My kids are 15, 13, and 9. And what I've learned along the way is it's never too late to start implementing these principles. If any of you work with college students or emerging adults, young adults, we hear every week of God bringing 19-year-olds and 25-year-olds and 29-year-olds back into the church and back into the faith. And similarly, it's never too young to start putting these principles into action. When we first started really unearthing what it looks like to build sticky faith, our youngest was about 5 years old. And honestly, it changed the way that Dave and I parented her and our other 2 older kids even then. In fact, every day I think I parent differently and a whole lot better because of our sticky faith research. So I'm going to share with you 3 major keys for building sticky faith. 3 things that any church, any youth ministry, and really any family can start putting into practice. The first of those keys is the importance of a sticky gospel. Now, if I was to show up at your church, say the next time your youth group is meeting or the next time your church is meeting, and if I was to go around and ask the high school students in your church, what does it mean to follow Jesus? Well, if your students are like the 500 that we tracked with, they would give 2 types of answers. The first type of answer is a list of things they would think they need to do as followers of Jesus. Things like pray, read the Bible, go to church. We love that one, don't we? And then the second thing that they would list is things that they think they're not supposed to do. Don't drink, don't chew, don't go with those who do. Now, the problem is when any of us, regardless of our age, whether it's a 15-year-old or a 45-year-old or a 75-year-old, if any of us truncate the gospel to this list of do's and don'ts, that is not the real gospel. That's what Dallas Willard called the gospel of sin management. The gospel of sin management. The gospel that's all about doing the do's, avoiding the don'ts, somehow doing these behaviors that make us feel a little bit better about ourselves, and maybe a little bit more like God likes us and God loves us. Now, how did we see this in our research? We followed these 500 youth group graduates from their senior year in high school through their first 3 years in college. I used to say through their junior year in college, but we've realized that first 3 years and junior year are not always the same thing. So we followed them from senior year in high school through their first 3 years in college. And at the end of that third year in college, we asked them, what does it mean to be a Christian? Now, I remember when the Fuller student who was part of the research team made that suggestion that we should include that question in our survey. What does it mean to be a Christian as these folks are in their third year of college? And I thought, well, we're not really going to learn very much from that, but okay, it's not going to harm anything. Well, I was really wrong, because when we asked this question, what does it mean to be a Christian? 1 out of 3 of the students who were tracking in our survey, who had been part of youth groups and been in college for 3 years, 1 out of 3 didn't mention Jesus in their answers. That's the kind of thing that should stun us as followers of Jesus. What did they mention? They mentioned behaviors, good behaviors, like, oh, being a Christian means we are to love other people. Does Jesus want us to love other people? That's not a trick question. Jesus does want us to love other people. But when we distill the faith, when we distill the gospel to good behaviors at all, no wonder young people are leaving the faith. When I think about this gospel of behavioralism, I think about a young person that we'll call Rebecca. Rebecca was a student in our church, and when I was working with junior hires at the time, love middle school students. When I was working with junior hires, Rebecca was in my cabin for a week, and she and I really bonded. Then she went to high school, and I stayed working with junior hires, so I kind of lost touch with her. And then she went to college, and I stayed working with junior hires, and I lost touch with her all the more. Well, she contacted me not too long ago via Facebook and said, hey, Kara, I'm interested in studying at Fuller. I'd love to touch base with you and find out more. So I said, great, let's meet for coffee. So she and I met for coffee, and we spent about 20 minutes talking about Fuller's programs and youth, family, and culture, which are amazing. And after about 20 minutes, I thought, you know what? I want to find out what Rebecca's transition from high school to college was like, because I really didn't know. So I explained, Rebecca, we're studying these 500 kids as they head from high school to college. I'm just wondering what that transition was like for you. And all of a sudden, her whole demeanor changed. And she had been giving me eye contact, but instead she looked at her cup and she said, oh, Kara, it was really, really hard. And I said, why? And she said, well, when I graduated, I started dating a non-Christian, and I went further physically than I ever thought I would go. And I felt so guilty and ashamed about what I had done that I plunged into an eating disorder and developed a depression. And she's sitting across the table from me, and my heart is just breaking. And as hard as it was for me to hear what she had said up to that point, what she said next was even harder. Because she said, in the midst of how badly I felt about myself, the last place I felt like I could go for hope was the church. The last place I felt like I could go for healing was to God himself. And I got into my minivan as I drove away from that Starbucks, and I just thought, I, as her youth leader, blew it. Because somehow she graduated from high school thinking that faith was all about behaviors. It was almost like this jacket that she wore. And when she tossed this jacket of behavioralism into the corner, she had no idea how to put it back on. And more importantly, she had no idea that faith is so much more than behaviors. Rebecca ended up running from God and the church just when she needed both the most, because I didn't understand the gospel that sticks. Now, if we stop this discussion right now, it would be kind of a bummer. But the good news is Scripture gives us a sticky and more robust and winsome and beautiful gospel that's far more than behaviors. In fact, you want to know what separates Christianity from every other religion? Well, Jesus, for one thing, but also grace. Grace. And in fact, my favorite way to describe the gospel is 5 phrases that all start with G. I've taught this to my own kids. I love teaching this to middle school, high school, college students. 5 words that all start with G. Number 1, we're created good in God's image. Number 2, our sin or our guilt separate us from God. Number 3, God couldn't stand that, so by God's grace, God sent Jesus that we might experience real life in the presence as well as eternal life with God. Number 4, we don't do this alone. We become part of God's people. And number 5, why do we serve? Why do we obey? It's not to make God like us more. It's not to make God love us more. It's because we're so full of gratitude. Gratitude is that 5th G. I love explaining to young people that we obey because our lives are like great big thank you notes. Great big thank you notes. And when I have a chance to sit one-on-one or in large groups with teenagers or college students, there's a phrase that out of our research on the gospel, I try to make sure they understand, and I hope you pass it on too. It's 6 words, and it's so powerful. And this is what I wish I had said to Rebecca. I wish I had said this phrase: Jesus is bigger than any mistake. Jesus is bigger than any mistake. If Jesus can't handle our students partying, we need a new Jesus. But Jesus and the gospel are bigger than their mistakes, their sins, their struggles, their doubts. And so out of our Sticky Faith research, our team at the Fuller Youth Institute, we're so passionate about this gospel of grace, this gospel that transcends our mistakes. And I personally am so glad that the gospel transcends my mistakes, because I make a lot of them every day. So that's the first key to sticky faith, is the sticky gospel. The second key we're going to look at is the sticky church. Really what it looks like to have a whole community of support around our young people. Now, to help us think about a sticky church, I'm going to share a little bit about my extended family on my dad's side of the family. My dad has 2 brothers and 2 sisters, all of whom have gotten married and all of whom have kids. I'm the oldest of 15 cousins on that side of the family. And when Grandma and Grandpa Eckman would get us together, I mean, you can do the math, what Christmas or Thanksgiving or Easter would look like. There'd be like over 25 of us gathered together. And it was way too many people to put around one table. So Grandma and Grandpa came up with a very clever solution involving 2 tables. They created the adults table and the kids table. Yes, the kids table. I'm guessing many of you have also eaten or created a kids table. Now, sure, there's a time and a space for a kids table, but when it comes to sticky faith, what we've seen is that too often we end up segregating young people, and that is not a verb I use lightly. We end up segregating young people from the rest of the church. And according to our research, that sabotages their faith. Is it important for 6 and 16 and 86-year-olds to have time to talk about life stage issues? You bet there is. But one of my life mantras is that balance is something we swing through on our way to the other extreme. And in our effort to offer relevant and meaningful ministry to young people, we've ended up siloizing them. Now, how do we know that hurts their faith? Our team at the Fuller Youth Institute, as we studied these 500 youth group graduates, we were trying to figure out, is there a silver bullet? Is there something that every church, every family, every youth leader can do that will yield long-term faith? And to be honest, we haven't found that silver bullet. It really doesn't exist, because ultimately it's the Holy Spirit that does spiritual transformation. Praise the Lord for that. So we haven't found a silver bullet, but we have found silver shavings, because we looked at 13 different youth group participation variables, 13 things that kids tend to do in the context of youth group. And you'll be glad to know that service and justice was correlated with mature faith in high school and college. So was studying scripture. So was student leadership. So are so many of the things that we do in youth ministry today. But of everything we looked at, of all 13 variables, the one that was most correlated with mature faith in high school and college was intergenerational relationships and worship. Yes, not separating kids off in their own kids' table, but having them be part of the overall life of the church. Now, one of the ways that sticky faith has come to be misunderstood is that some people think that we're somehow calling for the end of children's and youth ministry. And that is not at all the case. I love our children's and youth ministry at our church. We just had our volunteers from 4th and 5th grade, middle school and high school over to our house for dinner last weekend. We are so proud and pleased with the student ministry and the children's ministry at our own church. We're not saying to abolish children's and youth ministry. We're just urging every congregation to be creative and prayerful about how God wants to bring the generations together. One great way to do that is through what my friend and colleague here at Fuller Seminary, Chap Clark, calls reversing the 5-to-1 ratio. Now, what do we mean by that? My hunch is if I was to talk to you in person and talk to you about your upcoming retreat or small groups or even Sunday morning, Sunday school, whatever it might be, you might say, well, we try to have, let's just say hypothetically, 1 adult for every 5 kids. Well, what Chap is saying, and this resonates so well with our sticky faith research, is it's not 1 adult for every 5 kids, but let's reverse that and have 5 adults for every kid. Now, I'm not talking about 5 Bible study leaders. Don't worry. I know you're already having a hard enough time recruiting 1 for 5, and now I'm saying 5 for 1. That's crazy talk. No, what we are saying is 5 adults who are on that kid's team. 5 adults who show up at hockey games, who show up at soccer, who show up at Girl Scout events. 5 adults who pray for that kid or those kids. 5 adults who walk through life with that family and with that young person. 5 adults who are that safety net to catch that young person, not if they fail, but when they fail. Now, what are some ways that you at your church can create this intergenerational environment and facilitate these 5-to-1 relationships? A handful come to mind. First, I would say intergenerational service. As we've tracked with churches who've made progress toward intergenerational relationships, often service is low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of adults who are scared of 16-year-olds. This is not me. I love 16-year-olds, but there's a lot of adults who are scared of 16-year-olds. But if you're painting a local public school or offering a sandwich together to someone who's homeless, that breaks down walls between the generations. So if you don't know where to start, intergenerational worship is a great place to start. Intergenerational service is a great place to start. The second thing I was going to suggest, though, is intergenerational worship. Now, I know worship is a big nut to crack. So some churches are doing radical things like having the young people involved every week, either for the first 15, 20 minutes or the entire worship service. Other churches, including my own, are doing less radical things. We bring the generations together about 6 times a year. To be honest, those are my favorite weekends. And yes, they're more messy, just like it's more messy when you have kids and adults sitting around the same table in my dining room. It's literally more messy, but it's also so much more rich. And then I love, thirdly, what a lot of churches are doing in creating intergenerational activities. They're looking at what their church already does and then saying, how can we bring an intergenerational spin to it? How can we take a Mother's Day tea and make it more intergenerational? How can we take a men's ministry activity? How can we take a trip our church is already doing and bring the generations together around it? So those are just a few quick ways to put into practice the second key to sticky faith, which is a sticky church. And then third, lastly, we're going to look for a few minutes at how to build sticky families. I'm a real believer that it's not about the church or the family spiritually developing young people on their own. They have to come together. And that's why I love the theology and philosophy of orange, that it's the yellow that's the light of Christ combined with the red that's the heart of love in the family that ultimately come together in a beautiful shade of orange. And as we've tried to equip parents to know how to make a difference in quick and easy ways, because let me just say, I know how challenging it is to be a parent. I always tell people that my job at Fuller, it's pretty complicated. It's a piece of chocolate cake compared to what I do at home from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock with my kids. So we're busy. I mean, even tonight, we're trying to figure out how to pick my son up from soccer practice and et cetera, et cetera. That's our daily reality. That's why I love the research that we've done on parent-child faith conversations. We had a PhD student who this was her whole focus. And of all the ways sticky faith has impacted my parenting, I think that this is the one where it's probably impacted me the most every day. Because here's what we've seen. Is as wonderful as it is for parents to ask their kids questions about church, like, how was youth group? How was Sunday school? What'd you talk about? And, a lot of good Christian parents tend to do that. As wonderful as that is, it's as important that parents share about their own spirituality. And that's what parents aren't doing. Parents end up interviewing their kids or lecturing their kids, but they're not sharing organically about their own spirituality. So out of our research, after church, instead of us just asking our kids how church was for them, I'm sharing about what God showed me at church. I love to pray sitting on a blue couch in my living room. And when my kids come in the morning, let's say my son Nathan comes in and says, Mom, where are my tennis shoes? Before our research, I would think, isn't it great that my son is seeing me pray and read the Bible here in the morning? And that's true. That example is wonderful. But now when Nathan comes in and says, Mom, where are my tennis shoes? I say, hey, Nathan, can I show you this page in my prayer journal where I've written down prayers for you? Can I share with you what I'm reading in Psalms and what it means to me? And I do that, and then I say, and your tennis shoes are down the hall by the laundry room. So, we eventually get to the tennis shoes. But I love telling parents, our research isn't necessarily even saying you need to, quote, be more spiritual. Our research is saying share the spirituality you already have. And a lot of parents are doing that in such creative ways. They're doing that, and we can train parents in how to do this, how to maximize car time. It's a precious window for parents with their kids where, that worship song comes on or something comes on from the news that's really stressful or the parent of the kid has just had a tough day. how can somehow we introduce Jesus and God into that conversation? And how can we equip parents to do the same? How to use family dinners. Out of our research, we in the Powell family, we've always done highs and lows, but now we also ask, what mistake did you make today? And that's because we want our family to be a place, this relates to what we talked about with that first key, the sticky gospel, where we talk about mistakes regularly. And we also ask this question, how did you see God at work today? When we first asked that question, my then 9-year-old said, well, Mommy, Daddy, I can't answer that question. And we said, really? Why not? She said, well, I don't have a job. How did you see God at work today? So then when we defined it, how did you see God working? She and all of us now can answer that question. And then I would just say, lastly, and thinking about the unique role that we as leaders play in helping families reach their potential and really invest in kids, we can do creative training with parents. And I know that a lot of times when I was a youth leader and offered training to parents, usually the 20% or so of parents who showed up were the ones who least needed the training. And maybe that's been your experience too. But part of our Sticky Faith tracking with churches is we've seen youth leaders come up with really creative training topics, like how to share your spiritual journey with your kids. Parents want help in knowing how to do that. How to navigate technology. How to talk to your kids about sex. And what we've also seen is that churches have real success with parent training when they intervene when parents are, let's be honest, afraid. And a lot of times parents are afraid as their kids are getting ready to transition into a new school. So creative leaders are saying, how is that start of kindergarten a pivotal time for parent training? That start of middle school, that start of high school, that start of college. So I'm thrilled to dream with you and share with you about some of our Sticky Faith research on the gospel and a sticky church and how we can build sticky families that partner with us in seeing kids have a faith that lasts.
Kara, how you doing?
Doing great.
Awesome. Is sunny California sunny right now or not?
Well, yeah, it's pretty beautiful. It's 70 degrees. My kids are wearing shorts today, so it's a nice
I'm so
day.
Jealous. It is an overcast day in Michigan, like the 300 other overcast days in Michigan. So anyway, well, hey, I want to jump right in.
Housing prices than us. So, you've got bigger houses in which to enjoy yourselves in that cold weather. So
that's awesome. We cannot use our pools year round like you can, though. So anyway, but yes, that's very true. Cool. Well, hey, thank you so much for sharing. Such a fantastic session. I want to talk a little bit about what you said in your session, and then just talk a little bit about even what you couldn't cover because of time from the Sticky Faith books. But in your talk, you discussed the importance of partnering with families. And years ago, I remember having a conversation with you specifically about this. And you mentioned that a typical model for churches is that churches teach and parents reinforce. But maybe a more helpful model is one where parents teach and the church reinforces. And that really stuck with me, and I thought it really fit into what you were saying. Can you give an example or two of how churches maybe unintentionally teach, causing parents to reinforce?
Yeah. Well, I actually learned this firsthand from my own church because in our children's ministry, our church provides questions for families to talk over with their kids. And our student ministry does the same thing. But our student ministry provides questions for me as a mom to talk about with our teenagers after Sunday morning. And our children's ministry, I love what they do. They provide questions for me as a mom to talk over with our youngest before Sunday morning. So that sends the message that the conversation starts at home and the church reinforces it. And so a lot of times on Sunday mornings, I like to make cinnamon rolls. And Matthew, lest you be under any illusions, when I make cinnamon rolls, it usually involves a gesture like this. Okay, so I'm popping the can and
popping fresh, right?
Yeah, exactly. Popping that can, putting the cinnamon rolls in that oven for 13 minutes. And that's often my window to talk with our kids. Now, sometimes it ends up as we're driving to church in the minivan, and sometimes those Sunday morning discussions don't happen at all. But I love what our children's ministry did because it's the same amount of work for them. They're going to create questions either way. But they're saying, hey, if possible, parents, you start the conversation, and we just want to complement what's already happening in your home. So I think that's a really important message to send.
Have you seen that parents really do follow up with their kids throughout the week, or is it a learning kind of step-by-step thing with parents as they kind of go through that journey?
Yeah, I think parents do their best at following up when church leaders make it easy for them. And so I and other parents, we have tried to coach our children's and student ministry team about, we want like 3 questions. I don't want a cute story about bunnies. I really don't. Like, give me 3 questions that I can use. And that's made it a lot easier for me as a parent. It's just keep it simple, make sure it's regular. And like I said, I don't know what percent of parents actually do it, but for those who do, it's wonderful that our church provides that for us.
That's good. Easiness. Easy. And that typically works. That's good. In your session, you discussed the 5-to-1 ratio. And I think if there's anything that people know about sticky faith, I mean, one of the top things that rises on the list is 5-to-1 ratio. And I know it's been tremendously helpful for parents and students over the years. Can you give our viewers a couple of very practical ways to have students and parents pick those 5 key people to connect with?
I would love to. First off, when it comes to really children and teenagers, we as parents, we don't have to guess what adults are important to our kids. We can ask them. So, especially when our kids were younger, we would ask, and especially our girls were often needed a babysitter. And so we would ask them, who are some folks maybe at our church you'd like to get to know better? And usually they name 1 or 2 folks who babysit. So that was wonderful because we could then, align our babysitting needs with the relationships we wanted our girls to have. I know another mom, a really wise mom of teenagers who regularly asks her girls, who are some adults you'd like to get to know better? And then she just keeps that as a mental list. And if they ever have a free Sunday after church, they invite the 1 or 2 of those adults to lunch, or if there's ever a soccer game or an important school performance, then those are the adults this wise mom invites along. So, we can tell parents they don't need to keep this a secret from their kids. They can ask their kids about it. And in fact, in our family, we regularly talk about who's on your team. Who are those 5 adults? When our kids turn 13, we have done, with our oldest 2, we've done this already since they've turned 13 already. We've done this ritual where, they spent time with 5 different adults, and those adults wrote down advice, and, we created this box that still sits on our kids' shelves in their bedrooms, and that's their team box, and that's pictures and words of advice from those 5 adults. But again, we asked our kids to start that process. Who are some adults that you'd like to get to know better? So we don't need to keep it a secret. Parents can ask their kids straight out.
I love it. Don't keep it a secret. And then just in general, have communication, right? Just ask and they'll probably give you something. And so I know that's been the case for my wife and I, and we've been really unashamedly tell our 5-to-1s, hey, you are a 5-to-1 to our kids. And so we love that it's just out there and it's part of the language in our family and stuff. Here, let me cover something that's in one of the books, one of the Sticky Faith books. It's in the youth addiction book. And you didn't have time to talk about developmental theory and stuff, but I think it gets to some of the things that you were getting at. But in the book, you mentioned the developmentalist Robert Keegan from Harvard, and he suggests that an added life stage to Erickson's life development happens with students from 11 to 13 years old, called affiliation versus abandonment, and kind of giving those polar opposites. And in your study, one of the things that you found was that you note that college freshmen will go to all lengths to make sure that they're included and not abandoned, really functioning sometimes in some ways like a middle school student. College freshmen are acting that way. So that's really intriguing. So how can home churches make sure those college freshmen don't feel abandoned once they graduate, even when they're not in the same location? Like if a kid has gone off to college.
So smart. I love that you asked that question, Matthew. And we're seeing churches do amazing things. I mean, it's little things like youth leaders, small group leaders, and church members sending texts or using social media, or even a little thing you might have heard of, maybe some of your viewers have heard of, called the U.S. Postal Service, to actually mail.
What is that?
Yeah, I know. To actually mail packages to college students. And I love what some youth ministries are doing. I wish I had done this as a youth pastor. Is, as students start going to school, whether they're going away to school or staying locally, to some midweek or Sunday morning, instead of doing a regular teaching time, to meet in the church kitchen or to meet in the house and to bake cookies and create care packages and notes and posters and all that for those college students and to mail them off. And that message that's sent is not only powerful for the college students, but think about what that says to the high school students, that when I graduate, I won't be forgotten. So yes, our research shows that it's really important for churches to stay in touch however they can. I mean, some Sunday school classes are adopting particular seniors. Some children's ministry folks, I love these ideas. They're saying, Valentine's Day our third graders are going to make cards for college students. And so, for just kind of across the age range for the church to think about, what could we do these ideas take minutes in most cases. What can we do that will be such a powerful message to that college student?
One of the things that I love, and I've been involved with Sticky Faith for years, and I've known you for years, is that stuff is just so simple, just ridiculously simple. And then what college kid doesn't want a care package being sent to them, right? And so really easy ideas, really practical ideas, and then stuff that just makes them feel valued. So very, very, very helpful. I hope everybody listening just takes some of those things that you just mentioned and just says a couple of those things. So, so good. Hey, one of the things that you alluded to in your talk had to do with mistakes and doubt. And I wish, and we had talked about this just for the sake of time and stuff, that you didn't have a ton of time to talk about it. But in the Sticky Faith Guide for Your Family, that book, you take an entire chapter to sort through communication with your kids about faith. And in that chapter, you tell the story of, and you kind of let it be a big kind of surprise, but it's about Steve Jobs, who is a middle school student, basically gets shut down when asking questions about God. And you kind of have us imagine what might have happened had Steve been able to engage in thoughtful conversations about faith. And it makes me wonder, why do parents or pastors tend to either shut down difficult faith conversations or simply just give trite answers instead of wrestling through questions with their children or students in their ministries?
Yeah. A fantastic question. I think a lot of times parents and leaders are afraid that their kids' questions are going to stump them. I've had parents and youth leaders tell me this, that,
even as pastors, I feel that sometimes, right?
Totally. Well, Matthew, here's the thing. I have a PhD in practical theology. I've gone to 26 grades of school, okay? And the questions of my 13-year-old can stump me. So, let's be honest. Kids ask hard questions. And because there are hard things going on in life, and God can't be explained by just an easy formula, or quite honestly, God wouldn't be God. And so that's where I, as a parent and as a youth leader, have found real freedom in this phrase. And I hope that you and others watching can use this. That when a kid asks us a tough question, to say, I don't know, but how about you and me? Let's get together for coffee later this week and talk about it. I don't know, but here's what I have found to be true about God. I don't know, but I know a woman at our church who loves studying science. Let's go ahead and involve her and have lunch with her after church next Sunday. So, to keep the conversation going, as long as kids stay engaged in the conversation, we have hope. But if kids feel like the church is the last place they can go with their tough questions, then we've really lost a golden opportunity. So, what we've seen in our research is that doubt isn't toxic to faith. It's silence that is toxic to faith. And so we have to become
unexpressed doubt. That's
totally unexpressed doubt that's toxic to faith. And so we have to be comfortable with questions that don't have easy answers. And the phrase, I don't know, but it's helped me with my own kids and teenagers at our church. And it's been very helpful to others too.
And kids are perceptive, and they can sniff out when we're making up answers, can they not?
Totally.
Right? And so,
platitudes, that really does not work. It might work with a third grader, but not much past that. So,
right. That's good. Well, hey, let's end with a practical question, and then just where people can connect you with you on social media and stuff. But what is one suggestion? Let's say we've got lots of churches watching on, entire teams from churches watching on. What's one suggestion that you'd make to churches watching this webinar on how to take sticky faith principles to the next level in their context?
Yeah. Well, we've talked mostly together today about what needs to change. And that's a really important question. I think an equally important question is, how do we bring about change? And that's where I've been really affected as a leader trying to change culture in various churches and organizations like Fuller by this phrase: people tend to support what they create. People tend to support what they create. So as we all think about changes we want to make, I think a really important first question before we make those changes is, who do I need to talk to about this? What kind of input do I need to glean? And often we'll find, and we found this with countless churches, that people who were initially resistant to change become more open to it if they feel like they're part of the process, if they feel like they've been heard and listened to. So I would say, feel included, exactly. So, as you're thinking about teaching that needs to change to be more infused with grace, or intergenerational connections, or how to partner with parents, and you're realizing, say, as a youth ministry leader, that you really need to partner with your children's ministry leader in making that, shift to really partner with parents, then I would say, identify those leaders and then have an honest conversation with them, because people tend to support what they help create.
I love that. And I've heard you say countless times that people don't resist change, they resist loss. And I think that's Scott Cormode's brilliance. But people don't resist change, they resist loss. And so if you can get them to help understand that, it makes a big difference, right?
Totally. Identify the loss, and then you'll know how to walk with that person in the midst of the change.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, hey, final question. First of all, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
It's been an absolute delight to have you here, and I'm sure everybody just has benefited from what you've said. Final question, where can people connect with you and Sticky Faith on the internet and social media?
Yeah, wonderful. So we have stickyfaith.org, which is a website with hundreds of free resources, as well as some of the books and curriculum and video training for parents that you've mentioned, Matthew. And then I'm on Twitter at KPowellFYI. So KPowellFYI, as in Fuller Youth Institute. So happy to stay connected with people via social media in the future.
Awesome. Carrie, it was so good to have you on. Just selfishly, it's great always when we get a chance to connect. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care, okay?
My pleasure. Thanks, Matthew.
All right. See ya.